Hi, Rain. Thank you very much for doing this interview with me. I'm very happy to have you with me. And I came across your story in one of those carnivore groups. There's a whole bunch of them by now. And you said something really remarkable, that basically you were diagnosed with multiple sclerosis and that you were able to get many of your symptoms under control by just eating meat. Is this correct?
That's correct. And thank you for having me. I'm very happy to meet with you today. But yes, that is correct. I had very severe multiple sclerosis in a secondary phase. I had rheumatoid arthritis, earlier onset years before psoriatic arthritis, and also skin lesions from psoriasis on my skin. I was diagnosed with polysystic ovarian syndrome 25 years ago, or more than that, I think now. And so I had a culmination of really bad issues, along with some severe digestive issues that were never really identified, but caused an inability to process food almost entirely. I mean, I did eat, but it was just almost impossible to get any nutrients whatsoever. So I was to the point, and because of a huge stress in my life, and the difficulties going on in 2017, by November, I was at the end of the road. I was in need of a wheelchair, but using a cane. I barely walked, so it really didn't matter. Unable to go up the stairs in the home that we had there. I was unable to eat. I was taking large doses of prednisone because that was really the only thing that would help keep pain, both from arthritis and from MS, at bay. And it was the only thing available in the country that I was in. My children and I are full-time travelers. We travel across the world slowly, and that's part of their education. But that's why we were in a different place outside of the U.S. where we're from. And there was nothing available. I had tried so many medications, from methotrexate to Humira to all of these different things, and nothing worked. So I had put on a tremendous amount of weight. I had no muscle tone. I had nothing going for me. And at last, a doctor said, well, this is probably going to be your last Christmas with your children. You should start preparing in the next 12 months. By that point, I had such severe, what's referred to as the MS hugs. They would last for not just minutes or hours, but sometimes days, where my chest and my upper torso would just be seized in a sort of a muscle spasm, but it wasn't that exactly. And so I had really given up. I mean, I just thought there's really no point. I'm going to try and get through this. And prior to that, because of the difficulties we had experienced in our personal lives, I was already at that point. I was ready to just be done. And to say I was suicidal, I think, is true. And it's not that I'm an advocate of that in any way, shape, or form, but I was in agony all the time. I could do nothing with my children. I saw no future in working and doing anything, and how would I support them? And so by the time November 2017 rolled around, I was like, well, okay, I'm not going to, this is probably the end coming. I'm not going to make it to Christmas 2018. So they suggested assisted living or an even end of care hospice type of program. And I just said, no, I want to be with my kids. And my eldest son, who's 23, who has accompanied me every step of the way and joined me on it. And he's had great results as well, although he had no health problems. But I was just done. I was just ready to give up. There was just no future for any of us. I was going to be a hindrance to my kids, my family, and the depression that came along with MS, of course, is natural. But yeah, that's where I was. I could do nothing. I couldn't wear pants with buttons on them. I couldn't wear a button-up shirt because I couldn't. My hands were gnarled and twisted like an 80 or 90-year-old man with arthritis, and they were getting worse. And so I had been a vegetarian / vegan / raw vegan and it was periodic in that period of time for about 2.5 years before that, or about 2 years, I guess. And I just thought, well, that's not working any better than anything else, so I might as well work on eating a little bit of meat. My kids had given up vegetarianism by that time, and so I just thought we're gonna do the best we can to make this good. And I was slowly I had to readapt to eating meat and solid foods because I hadn't in so long.
So, in that whole time when your health was steadily getting worse, you were on a vegan/vegetarian/raw vegan diet. So you were going like back and forth, but you were very much like plant-based, yes?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, during the vegetarian periods, which would probably go longer because I really didn't have too much of an issue with dairy, such as fresh cheeses and butter, and I didn't drink milk. I didn't do anything like that. But those were the two things that I could, have a little bit of tolerance to. And during the vegan times, and I would say that I probably spent about 1 year out of the two as a vegan and 1 year out of the two as a vegetarian, a little bit more liberal. I don't eat eggs, so eggs weren't really on the menu then, even as a vegetarian. So it was just really an inclusion of dairy. And I did the raw juice thing. I mean, it was just, there was a desperation to just be able to keep going. In 2017, when I was, it had hit my worst, I was 47 years old, and I had 6 of my children still at home. I had adopted 6 special needs kids and had 2 biological, so I had a large group. But of those still at home, the youngest was so young. How do you stop living? How do you stop trying until you hit that wall and it's okay, it's done?
So that was the end of 2017, yes, around that time?
Yeah, it was around November of 2017 when a doctor just finally said no more. I was also experiencing frequent pneumonia. I had 1 seizure. I was having heart issues that weren't really identifiable except for I have a genetic type of very mild heart murmur that seemed to be exacerbating. So, and they really thought it was indirectly or possibly directly related to the MS. So really, I was just there. I mean, there really wasn't much for me to do. I was also having trouble with swallowing and breathing. Not all the time, but on a daily basis, I would go through periods where I couldn't swallow, take a drink of water, and I couldn't swallow it, and would end up choking. And so it was a pretty serious thing. And so November rolled around, and by December, my kids kind of had that little intervention and said, let's just keep trying more things. And my eldest son was really the only one aware of how dire the situation was. He said, let's just keep trying, try eating meat. Let's see if we can't just get something in you to get some help, to get some strength. So that's when I added some meat in, and it started with chicken because it was the only thing I could digest. And slowly, I think it took 2 or 3 weeks till I could kind of keep that in me. And then I would moved on to, I think it was pork, because it was another more easily digestible. And then I worked to lamb and then to beef, with a few things in between. I am not a big seafood eater, so that really wasn't in the mix, but I'm not adverse to it. And so that's how it worked. And by, I would say, February, I had been researching all the time. I was immobile, so it didn't matter what I did all day except for take care of my kids as best as I could. And I came across a lot of references to zero carb and carnivore diet and the keto even, although that didn't really seem to apply quite specifically to me personally. I could really identify with that. And so I began on March 16th of 2018, just last year. And I believe it was less than 10 days, 7 to 10 days. I no longer needed a cane to walk around the house. Within, I think, 3 to 4 weeks after I began I was able to walk up and down the stairs. I mean, I would still get out of breath because I was just out of shape, but I could do those things without pain. The pain was gone literally within 4 weeks, entirely. And I was able to digest food for the first time in years. And I never had any issues after that. I had one experience with an MS hug, but I had no more. I mean, all of the episodes completely have gone into remission. I don't want to say that I'm completely healed because I think that would be unfair to people. But having been in the secondary remissive phase of MS and then nothing, I've had no lapses whatsoever with the multiple sclerosis in a year. It's a pretty good remission. So I've been very happy. Yeah, I am. I initially did lose, I would say within the first 4 months, I had lost about 55 pounds. I think that's about 22 kilos, if I'm not mistaken. And I was really healthy. I was doing really good, and I continued to do good. I did have a few lapses during this past winter around November and December because of the location we were at. A few foods got introduced because of cultural things that came into. We were in Eastern Europe and we're with people who it was very, very big thing in their culture to give you food, and I would feel so terrible for not eating any of it that I would. And so that kind of led to, I would say I'd get a few aches and pains from arthritis related. Nothing, I don't believe, that was related to MS in that way. But it did definitely, for that month or two, stall weight loss and things. But then I was able to kick it up again. We were really eating a lot of pork rather than beef because of availability. And after about 4 months of that, I really came to see that that wasn't, for us, for my eldest son and I, it wasn't really sustainable. It wasn't giving us the energy. It wasn't giving us, everything that we needed. So now that we're back in an area that has excellent beef, that's really radically turned around. But a lot of things I think were out of my awareness. I think the post that you're referring to was, I was like, guys, I am just completely stunned. I had no idea. I knew I could bend over now, and I hadn't been able to do that. I couldn't lift my arms to hang up laundry on a clothesline or do anything like that before, but then I didn't think really. I thought I was walking a lot. That was great. It was a big deal for me, and I'm thinking, this is really as good as it can get. Until suddenly, I don't even know how it happened. I think with one of my kids, they were doing some exercises or fooling around, and I did a couple of squats, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can do this. And then it was just like this thing that just got started, and I think I'm up to 200 squats a day now in 20 rep increments, because I love it. It's just so great, and I'm building muscle in my legs, and I still have weight to lose, and I want to be very clear about that. But being about 100 pounds overweight, a lot of it medically induced, from medication side effects, it's a really huge deal for me to be able to do that, to lift weights. I can lift, my 12-year-old up, and I couldn't do that when he was, 8 or 9. So yeah, I've been really excited. So the improvement continues, and now I think it's more of just building upon the foundation of wellness that I already have, or that became established through the dietary improvements.
So just to clarify this to the viewers, so basically in March 2018 it was, yes, you started eating only meat, correct?
Well, I do eat dairy foods. I use butter to cook leaner meats with, and I do eat cheese, and I do still occasionally have tea and coffee, decaf coffee, but I use heavy cream in that as well. That's just sort of that's what I've maintained that social interaction with. Food is no longer my social go-to. I don't feel the need to feed everybody in the world so we can come together and have a social get-together. Now it's kind of like, let's sit and have a coffee, and I can do that. I wasn't able to drink tea or coffee for several years because of the digestive issues I had.
Okay, so it's meat and animal products and some coffee and tea.
Yes, and lots of water. Sea salt. I try to get pink Himalayan when I can, although we're currently in Morocco and I cannot find it anywhere. So it's just Celtic sea salt now. But yeah, that's it. That's really it.
So I want to go back for a minute because you said that when you first started reintroducing meat, which was chicken, that it took you 2 weeks to, you said, to keep it down.
I had problems with, sometimes I would vomit, but mostly I had problems with very frequent loose stools and diarrhea. It was just, even to the point of blood in my stool, and I would go to a doctor for that, and they would never find a cause. Other than saying, well, it could be from your medicine, it could be from MS. There's some people say that they have that, but it's not been studied at length, so it could be just about anything. And I no longer have that. I had severe reflux as well. Um, and so, vegetarian diet where there were things I couldn't have, like bananas, would make me just vilely ill with stomach acid burning and coming up from my throat. And it was just really terrible. So I didn't have a great variety in what I could eat. I could get very little protein also because I couldn't digest at all any legumes whatsoever. No beans, no anything. So I was pretty limited.
I find this remarkable that you stuck through the 2 weeks, because I think many people they would have, by the first time, maybe the first 2 days, they would say, no, I can't eat chicken. I'm giving up on it. So this was great that you stuck through it. But so are you taking any medication now?
No, I am after the first about 4 weeks when I started. I no longer needed anything. I don't take anything at all. With the exception of last night, I did take an ibuprofen because I have a broken tooth. And so the swelling was so bad and there was nothing else I could do for it until I get to the dentist. That's the first medication I've taken.
But yeah, I meant MS medication. You're not taking any MS.
Nothing. No. I stopped all steroids. I did have to decrease dosage, of course, in the beginning, and I started decreasing it about the first, actually first probably 5 or 6 days. I thought, wow, I feel pretty good. I can get up and walk, and by the time I was able to set aside the cane and actually be steady on my feet, because I could fall a lot. I'd get injured quite often from falling. Um, so yeah, I started tapering that off over, I think it was about a week or 10 days, under advisement, and that was the end of that.
So another interesting thing you said that you were first eating chicken, then you added pork, and then you switched to beef, and that it made a huge difference switching to beef. Is this correct?
Yeah, I find for me, and my son also has found that beef as a primary source. Now, we will eat chicken, we will eat pork, according to availability or occasionally for switching things up. But really, beef has made a huge difference. And we noticed that after using mostly pork and chicken for a period of about 3 or 4 months, that it literally made a huge difference. His skin is just glowing now from eating much more beef and being able to consume more easily available high quality beef.
So how much meat, or in general, how much do you eat per day on average?
I would say on an average at first I couldn't say it would be less than a half a pound, less than a quarter of a kilo. Now I can eat fairly easily about a half a kilo, about 1 pound. Pre-cooked weight. But I'll put a little butter on it, or have a piece of cheese with it. And by a piece of cheese, a 1 ounce chunk of cheese or something along those lines. And so that's pretty much standard for me.
So do you eat once a day?
Generally, yeah. I mean, I might have, a bite or two in the evening, but really my prime time for eating is about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I will eat earlier if I absolutely have to, but that's really my good time for eating. And then that's mostly it. Like I said, I'll have a nibble off of something, but that's really all I'll do. No more meals.
Do you do this because eating once a day makes you feel the best, or because you just don't have hunger?
Well, I think what happened when I was trying to make myself, in the beginning especially, I was trying to make myself eat more frequently. I really didn't end up holding that much food, and because I wasn't really hungry, I was just trying to do everything to just build myself up. And when I found that eating and utilizing meat more efficiently made me feel better, I thought, well, then I just need to increase it and get more in me for all the nutrients and everything I've been missing out on for so long. And um, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't. If I ate a little bit in the morning, I would not be hungry all day. And then I did go through a short period where I think I lost weight a little too quickly. And I have come to kind of discern that if I do that, I tend to have electrolyte problems because I walk a lot every day and I sweat a lot. I mean, we walk anywhere from 7 to 10 miles a day, doing things. We're in Morocco right now, so we walk around the city and we see the sights and we do all that stuff. So we're pretty active, and I do get depleted of electrolytes pretty fast if I don't add salt to my water or have something to keep that up. But eating smaller didn't work for me, and it just kind of worked out. Well, okay, I'm finally hungry in early afternoon. That's my time.
So at this point, do you feel that there is anything left over from the MS that constricts you in your daily life? That you say, okay, I cannot do this or that on that because of my illness, or is doesn't
I,
exist
I
anymore?
don't I don't think so. I mean, I think my vision hasn't improved, and I had really hoped for improvement there, but it's not so deficient. I can read for very short periods if in under the best of conditions without glasses, but really I don't try to do that because it really strains my eyes a lot. So I had hoped for improvement. That was MS related eyesight problems. That really hasn't improved. Um, so there's that. And I think for a while I had really big problems with balance. I mean, there was just suddenly a point I realized I could walk up and down stairs without holding onto rails, which is a very common thing I noticed from that post you had talked about. A lot of people, that's your wow moment of, wait a minute, I don't need to hold on to the rail going down the stairs or up the stairs. And I had that. And it's really not been that long ago. I still had balance problems, I would say up until probably 4 or 5 months ago. But now I don't seem to have that. Depth perception's not really great. So whether that's MS related or not, I don't know. Could be. But no, I don't. I heal much faster. That also took a lot of time. I used to bruise easily, bleed easily, still bleed fairly easily, but bruising happens, but it heals much quicker than it ever did.
Could you tell me how were you diagnosed? Was it just only based on your symptoms, or did you also have an MRI done? And there are different types of MS. Which one exactly did the doctor tell you that you have?
Well, in 2010, I had been healthy. I actually followed a paleo type diet at that point in time. Um, I suddenly had what I thought was a heart attack. I ended up being taken to the hospital in an ambulance and such and so on. And they said, no, you're having an anxiety attack and everything's fine. I've never had an anxiety attack. I've always been in high stress jobs, never had an issue. As a matter of fact, I'm the person who's not anxious about things. And I kept getting worse from that, which that in and of itself wasn't the cause of it, but in the process I endured some brain swelling, and they during the MRIs found lesions that were consistent with MS. And when the swelling had dissipated, then I was left with what I understood to be that first real episode of hardcore MS. So that was in 2010. Um, and I did um, have shorter recurrences of episodes. but that was about the time, I think I never really got that sense of balance, was always missing from about that time forward. And then things just would get really bad, and then I would be okay. And so when we started traveling full time, that was my thinking, well, I really want to make the most of this while I'm able to with my kids, while they're at a good age and we can all enjoy it and have a lifestyle change. And I did go through, sometimes it might be only a day of where I just needed to be in bed because I couldn't really function, or it could be, a week or longer. But until 2017, I guess it was the beginning of 2017 when I really realized that this is getting very bad. And then, as the year wore on in 2017, that's when things got very serious. But yes, I had consistent diagnosis, and I was really in denial for probably a couple of years that that's what I had, even though I had that document, all of those documents that said this is it. And the initial response was that it was primary remissive multiple sclerosis. So it was expected to go into remission for longer periods of time and such. And it wasn't until 2017, around October, that a doctor said, okay, you finally hit the secondary progressive multiple sclerosis.
Are you still under the care of the doctor who told you that you had only 1 year to go and to get your affairs in order?
No, I was pretty much done. By about March of last year, I thought, no, this isn't a good thing for me. If I keep introducing that into my awareness, I don't want that to be the thing that causes me to lose the impetus to keep going forward. And I recognize that, it could just be remission. It may not be a complete healing, but I'm just going to keep going as if it is. And if that happens, that I have a relapse, then it happens. I'll deal with it when it comes. But for now, that didn't seem to be the case. It was either a misdiagnosis or meat healed me. And that's what I'm sticking with right there, is that meat is my savior. So in that regard.
That's right, meat heals.
It does, and there's no other way to put it. It did.
So, are you seeing any doctor at all right now?
No, I haven't seen a doctor since last year. I did, for a long time, continue to monitor my blood pressure because being on prednisone for such a long period of time had kept my blood pressure elevated, sometimes dangerously so. I did take blood pressure medication. And I haven't taken any of that. And now my blood pressure is, pretty solid, 116 over 26 or 28. But I got rid of the blood pressure monitor too, because it was like, well, I don't think I want to buy an updated one. This is good. I'm maintaining for so long. I'll go about that and quit keeping such a close eye on it when nothing's happening.
Right. Well, I'm just asking because it will be interesting to see the reaction of a doctor, where you tell him, hey, I have all my MS symptoms under control by just eating meat.
Yeah, I thought of that, and I probably will. I'll wait until I go back to the United States, because, of course, that's where the majority of my records are, and it would be really great to go back and say, okay, you guys said this is what was going to happen, and here's where I'm at. I would go back to the country where I was when they last told me, prepare for the worst, because this is it. I did talk to those doctors and said, no, I'm still here and I'm doing really good. And it was met with stony cold silence. Well, that's just not possible. So when you get sick again, come back and we'll give you some more medicine. And I'm just not going to do that. So I found a different path for myself.
But so let me recap real quick to make sure that I understand it correctly. So you went paleo in 2010, and you said that at that point you were still pretty healthy. And then it must have been around 2015 where you started getting more and more into vegan and just vegetarian stuff. And so in those 2 years between 2015 and 2017 is when your health deteriorated very quickly, yes?
Yeah.
And so only after you switched to only eating meat, nothing else, and some other animal products, did you rapidly improve?
Very rapidly, which I know is not always the norm for everybody, but it was very rapid and very apparent that I was healing quickly. So yeah, that's it exactly. March 2018 is when I started, and within weeks was almost a normal person, except for carrying excess weight, which came off fairly fast after that as well.
Yeah. This is really absolutely remarkable. I hope a lot of people will watch this and take this as an example of what's possible, because conventional medicine tells us that MS is incurable. But then, we're not saying you're cured, right? I think it's probably more correct to say that you're successfully managing your symptoms, because whenever
Yes.
you eat something plant-based or something that you know is bad for you, the symptoms come back, right?
I haven't had a return of the symptoms. I have had a return, a slight, when I have had something introduced, whether it was plant or flour or gluten of some sort, I would wake up somewhat swollen and achy, but I think that was a little bit more in regards to rheumatoid arthritis than it was necessarily MS, because it was joint swelling. It could have been either, or it could be both. I don't know. But within a few days that goes away, so I just don't do that anymore. But my hands, I have witnesses who could bear testimony to the gnarling and twisting and turning my hands had, and they are also now straight. Little on the pudgy side, but, they're pretty normal. And I'm really thankful for that. My fine motor skills have returned, my gross motor skills have returned. I am not in top athletic condition, but at least I have the ability to obtain that or attain that for myself.
Yes. Well, let's give it a couple more years. Who knows? Maybe you'll be at the Olympics.
Yeah.
One more thing that interests me, because there's, I don't know whether you're aware, but there's this metal toxicity community, and so they say that MS could be also caused by mercury toxicity. So my question,
Right.
have you ever had amalgam fillings in your life?
I didn't have amalgam fillings myself, no. And until I think I only had 1 or 2 fillings as a child, but they were checked to make sure that they weren't. My father had Lyme disease and also rheumatoid arthritis. Now, it was suggested to my dad, who was a veteran of the Vietnam War, through his Veterans Association doctors. He had been exposed to Agent Orange during that time. He was in the early stages of the Vietnam conflict. And so my brother also had a very rare disease when he was young. And so, I think that there was a lot of issues that could have been surrounding that more than some of the toxicities. Now, my dad did have mercury amalgam fillings, and he had them removed. I would imagine probably it's been 30 years ago. But I am aware of that, and I think it's a very logical conclusion to draw. But potentially that's not what caused that in my case, although it could have been any number of things. I worked in various fields in my young adulthood, including gold mining. I could have had who knows what exposed to myself. So
Gold mining, okay. Well, in the processing of gold,
right,
there's also mercury involved. So
right.
maybe you did get.
It's potential. Yeah, it's very possible. It's very possible.
Have you ever received antibiotics in early childhood? Do you know about that?
Yeah, I did. I had, a problem when I was very young about and received antibiotics for probably 2 years until they thought I had an ear infection that was just severe. Later came to find out, because we lived in a rural area, it was a large tick in my ear for all of that time. And it was removed. No one ever found it. No one ever checked. They just would do the thing and give you antibiotics. And so I was exposed to antibiotics when I was quite young.
Because this is another theory that what may be causing MS in some people are the oxalates.
Right.
Oxalates are tiny crystals in plant foods, and especially in people who have a history of antibiotic use. So you have to assume that their bacteria, their gut bacteria, which is responsible to digest oxalates properly, that type of bacteria doesn't exist. And so then oxalates become a problem, and they can cause all types of inflammation. And I think your story that you say that you basically your symptoms got worse the more vegetables you were eating, the more plant foods. That would that sounds plausible. That oxalates
Absolutely.
could be
And I've been reading and hearing a lot more about the oxalates and the dumping that they cause at certain periods. And it very well could be related to that in the plant food, because I know I have no desire to go back to that just because of the potential. And when I have had small bits and pieces of anything, it just doesn't make me feel good. I don't sleep well, I don't do whatever, and so that's enough for me. I do think that there is at the very least, a potential that oxalates during that dumping phase could trigger at least a relapse or an episode of the more severe symptoms of MS. So, all of that sounds very plausible, and I think could definitely be directed at myself and my experiences and many other people.
Mm-hmm. So have you had any pushback from family or friends who said, "Oh my God, what are you doing? Eating only meat? You're killing yourself. You're gonna die of a heart attack in 2 weeks."
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. As a matter of fact, I really hadn't been incredibly open about it until just a few weeks ago. And suddenly I was blocked by friends and family members on Facebook and all the social media. And when I'm like, what's going on? What happened? Is this a problem? Because I've been hacked multiple times. And I thought, well, maybe it's a hack or something. And when I inquired, I actually had two people tell me that no, they just didn't want, even though we were friends and they were glad I was okay, they didn't want my story to show up on their feed because it was an opposing view to their personal dialogue that they were promoting, either vegan or vegetarianism, and that they just didn't want any more to do with it. And so, that's fine. I personally struggle with the idea of dismissing people that I care about on any level because of what they choose to eat, but that's a personal situation.
But that shows how much veganism is really about ideology and not about health, and not even about animal health. When you look at the vegan cat and vegan dog nonsense that's going on, right? Which, in my opinion, is just animal abuse. And so,
it is. It's terrific.
So that's crazy. So I mean, you're telling them, look, I have all my MS symptoms under control just by eating meat, and they're blocking you, and they're like, no, I don't want to know anything about it. That's crazy.
Exactly. And that's it. Rather than saying, wait a minute, I'm so glad you're alive, and I'm glad that you're feeling good and you can carry on with your family and whatever. No, I haven't actually, from very many people who are vegan or vegetarian in my circle of acquaintances and family, that I have gotten no responses like that. It's all been immediate blocking, unfriending, whatever. And that's disappointing, but you're right. It isn't an ideology. It's become the new religion. We have to wear our diet. We wear our political beliefs. We wear them like a badge. And then if you fall out of favor with your following or your group of people, of like-minded people, then you're rejected and shunned, excommunicated, so to speak.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't have any more questions unless you want to say something that we have omitted so far.
I think I covered it. I think I took up a whole lot of time just talking about all of that, but I really hope that other people are encouraged, especially when they're at that last ditch effort, when they finally say, I've tried everything. I've tried every drug. I've tried every diet. Nothing's working for me. And if you haven't tried this, give it a shot, because if it makes even a small amount of difference, then you're that much ahead. And life is so much more than being bedbound or wheelchair bound, when it doesn't necessarily have to be. If you make a little progress, if you go from a wheelchair to using a cane to walk, then that is 100% improvement, and it's so worth it. And those small steps, I just keep thinking when I see people on the carnivore groups, the zero carb groups, and they're talking about their experiences, and I didn't know I could do this, or this just happened for the first time in my life, or recent history. And I think it's those small steps, it's those little small things that you overlook, like being able to let go of the handrail on the stairs, or going from a wheelchair to a cane, or just getting out of bed and sitting in a chair. Those small things mean the world. And I really hope that if anyone sees this and is encouraged by it, then you have brought it together and made that possible. And I'm really glad for that.
Raenn, thank you very much. It was a real pleasure talking to you. And
yes, you also.
Let's get the word out there.
Absolutely. We'll work hard. Meet heals.
That's right.